and what safety systems we have or don't have. And quite frankly, and I think most of the people in this room know it, Oyster Creek is the same design as Fukushima. It's a Mark IV GE reactor. And we have problems there with dry well liners corroding, and we have problems there with tritium leaks into groundwater, and we have problems there with storage pools that are in the air, just like in Fukushima, and we have problems there with some little things like a power failure causing a major fish kill this summer. You know, the disaster of Oyster Creek is what it's done to Barnegat Bay. It's already a disaster. It could become a catastrophe if there's an accident there, but it's already a disaster. Pumping superheated water into that bay that causes algae blooms and basically sucks that bay through that plant in a month's time, as Willie well knows. And that impact to that bay has helped rob a lot of the life out of that ecosystem, and you know, and helped close clam beds and made sure that we've got sea nettles instead of fresh fish in that bed. Oyster Creek not only has all these serious problems, but it's in an area that's the fastest growing county in the state of New Jersey and one of the fastest in the Northeast. And it sits between two of the largest metropolitan areas in the country. So when they talk about Fukushima and 40 miles around, it's 40 miles around Oyster Creek. What's within 65 miles? Philadelphia and New York City. And you think about it sitting on top of the Pinelands Aquifer, and if there's a real leak into groundwater more than they have, and you think about that aquifer that feeds the whole southern part of New Jersey getting contaminated. So Oyster Creek is a Fukushima waiting to happen. But instead of closing it down, because the laws were written by the military-industrial complex when Sierra Club and a lot of the other groups in this area sued to try to shut it down and stop its license, we lost in court. We had some leverage because that plant needed cooling towers, and we had a draft permit from Governor Corzine. We couldn't get him to do it for 4 years, but before he left office, he did a draft permit calling for cooling towers there. Maybe had he done it 2 years early, he might have gotten reelected. But he waited till after he lost to do it. I guess he thought if you can pardon criminals, you could try to pardon the Bay at the end. But it was too little, too late, because then Governor Christie came in, and I'll say something that some people may not realize, but this whole scam about this administrative consent order that's going to close the plant early is not worth the paper it's written on. Because an administrative consent order by a governor does not trump an NRC license. Just ask the people in Vermont and what's happened up there. And we knew that going in. And as part of that deal he cut with Exelon, he killed the cooling towers. The one piece of leverage we had to try to close that plant down. Because if they had to build the cooling towers, the cost of that cooling towers, and whether it was $280 million or $400 million or more, given the other problems with that plant and the other costs that they would need to fix that plant, it would no longer be economically viable, and it would have closed. It would probably close within 5 to 7 years versus now we have a piece of paper that says 9 years, except for the license hasn't changed. Exelon sent a piece of paper saying they have an ACO and they plan on closing the plant at the end of 2019. But NRC has never modified the permit, so that paper isn't worth anything. And if you read the NRC rules are very specific. For decommissioning a plant, you have to do a specific application. You have to do it within a year before you schedule to close it. So a piece of paper now doesn't mean anything, because there's not even a process in place for that to become a viable document within the NRC's eyes. And that's what we were facing. We also are facing with Oyster Creek, a plant that is operating not because it's efficient, not because it's cheap to operate, it's because we're all subsidizing it. Every month on your electric bill, you pay a charge. It's about $5 a month per person. It's called stranded assets. I mean, if people know about it? Stranded assets are part of your bill. And by the way, it's more than double what the Clean Energy Fund gets. It's for what are considered under our energy dereg law for facilities that were not considered viable economically for the utilities, that the cost for their capital upgrades or their construction is thrown into a pool that is paid for directly by the rate base so that it doesn't figure into the auctions when we auction for electricity. So Oyster Creek itself, when they had their upgrades in the 80s, $800 million, we pay for that. Any other upgrades they do, we pay for that. They don't. And that's why every year Oyster Creek provides about $120 million a year in profit for Exelon. They bought it for less than $18 million. But we're paying off that note. They're not paying it. We're also putting in money in another fund that costs you a couple of bucks a year called the Nuclear Plant Closure Fund. And that has $400 or $500 million in it that's controlled by Exelon, not by the ratepayers who pay for it. So when you think about the plant closure fund, the stranded assets, no cooling towers, the reason that plant is operating, it's not because it's economically viable, it's because we're subsidizing it. When you think of all the other subsidies that we give that plant, from liability to homeland security grants to even letting them get away with an evacuation plan that doesn't work. Because the people here didn't know what their evacuation plan is. My favorite piece is that if there is a leak or a major event, that school bus drivers from Tom's River have to drive over to Seaside Heights to pick people up. Now, I don't know about anybody, but I don't know too many kamikaze school bus drivers. Well, I had one, that I thought she was kind of, dangerous, but in general, I think if they hear there's an alert, they're going the other way, and they're not coming across. The other thing is, you can't get around this place on a summer weekend. There's 1 million people living, within, a 15-mile radius. Come summertime, it's double. How do all the people on Barnegat Bay and boats get out of here? And it's ludicrous that a plant that is this old, 69 years old, I look at it as a 1969 Dodge Dart that's still functioning. So, wetlands were something you built houses on, and, DDT was something you sprayed on your vegetables, and we've learned a lot since then, and that's really the problem. The other point with this plant is that it really needs to close. I mean, there is no justification to keeping this plant open. It's not safe. It has a serious problems. It's being subsidized by the rest of us. And so when we say no more Fukushima, we should also be saying no more Oyster Creeks, no more Indian Points, and just get that list going and keep going. And so when you walk tomorrow, think about it. We did an event there, I forget how many years ago. It was one of my first events around Oyster Creek, and it was about security. And we showed up, and it was almost like something out of The Simpsons. The security guard was sleeping in the garden. Luckily, we had a TV crew with us, so but that's what we expect. And when you think about nuclear power, it's really the hubris of some people. It's this belief that man can conquer anything, and that there are no consequences. Well, nature or God or whoever you believe in has shown us time and time again there are consequences and are things that aren't beyond our control. And more importantly, there are many things that we can't think of. What I loved about that exercise was thinking about this world of the future, and a lot of us couldn't do it. It's because we haven't been programmed and we've been living off of fear for so long. We can think of the negative side a lot easier than we can think of the positive side. And when you think of a plant like Oyster Creek, that is the negative. On the other hand, we're also at a point in time in history where there are real choices that can be made. When we look at nuclear power, and I think it's the most expensive and dangerous way in the world to boil water, because that's basically what it is. And in Maryland, they recently canceled the power plant because it cost to build 1,500 megawatts of nuclear power in 2 units. It was almost $20 billion. For $20 billion, you could do a lot of solar, and you could do a lot of wind. In fact, you could do 3,000 megawatts off the coast of New Jersey for about $10 billion. So you could do twice the wind for half the cost without having worrying about any kind of meltdown. And I know there was a disaster at a solar farm. A solar panel fell over and stubbed the toe of the gardener who was cutting the grass. And, that's the difference. If a windmill off the ocean, has a meltdown, it means, okay, so a motor burns out. Maybe a blade falls off and hits a seagull. The nuclear power plant has an accident. It's an accident that we may never not only see the end of, but neither will our children or grandchildren, because when there is a serious disaster, I mean, we're talking, 10,000 years before an area could become habitable. We're talking, the fact that we could be destroying not only, a plant, but a community and an ecosystem in the whole region. And the costs are just not worth it. And right now, we have a future, and that future can be a green energy future. The Sierra Club has been involved in energy issues, and it's one of our prime issues. And in the last 5 years, we helped close 100 coal plants across the country that were polluting mercury and carbon dioxide. And the 99th was in Portland, Pennsylvania, that closed this week after a lawsuit by Sierra Club. We've been fighting that plant for about 7 years. And that was 99. 100 was in Chicago. We also helped stop 150 new plants from being built around the country because they're inefficient, and without subsidies, they don't work. And that's the whole point. Pollution is a subsidy. Your health is a subsidy. Nuclear power, is an old button that I have at home from the 1970s that said, nuclear power rate hikes in cancer. That hasn't changed. And so we have this future that we can have that will be greener, that will create jobs. In the state of New Jersey, there are 25,000 jobs in the green energy sector, 5,000 in solar alone. Energy efficiency is the most untapped resource that we have. Just any home that was built in the 70s or 80s, for a cost of a few $1,000s, you could actually cut your energy usage in half by just putting better insulation in the attic, replacing your windows, and buying Energy Star appliances and furnaces. But yet Governor Christie has been raiding that fund and has taken $300 million out of it so far. This year he's proposing taking $200 million to give tax cuts to millionaires. So the person who wants to go buy an Energy Star refrigerator and get a rebate, his money's now going to go to a millionaire, and he won't be able to, he may not be able to afford that refrigerator. That helps protect all of us, because when we do energy efficiency, we lower use, we lower demand, and it actually makes it cheaper for all of us and saves on power. If we in Ocean County did better energy efficiency on every one of our homes, there's 450,000 people in the county now. You could, what, more now? 600 now? Is it up?
Around there.
If you did energy efficiency on every home in Ocean County and Atlantic County, you could close Oyster Creek.
Okay.
That's really what we're talking about. We're talking about also a lot of jobs and a lot of economy moving forward and moving this country forward. Sierra Club's goal is to be carbon-free by 2030. Now that's an ambitious goal, because it also means getting rid of fracking and making sure that doesn't happen, and getting rid of natural gas. And Governor Christie, who I said has taken all the clean energy money, also wants to subsidize gas power plants to the tune of $2 billion to build 3 of those plants. And that will create fracking in Pennsylvania that threatens the water supply for 15 million people. But the point is, that's why the battle that we're facing right now is so important. Because it's about whether we're going to have a clean energy future where we're going to lower our pollution levels, we're going to grow our economy, create millions of jobs, and make this planet a much better place. And we have that power within us. But the problem is we have to make sure that government gets it, because that's where the force of all of us comes in. Because that's in front of us. So we could be carbon-free and nuclear-free in a generation. And that's not a dream. That could be a reality. And that may be the positive that you couldn't think of. That could be the positive that when you're thinking about the negative, well, what's our future can be? Future can be that we can, in our own society, produce enough power that we can get rid of carbon and we can get rid of nuclear power. And that should be our future. Thank you.